So today I want to talk to you about one of our 10 thought disturbances at Mind Movement called the victim mentality. Now, before you get offended and think that we're talking about the poor me's, that's not what this is at all. At Mind Movement, we've identified 10 patterns of thought that are common to everyone, but where they vary is in terms of severity, how bothersome they are or how severe, that we all have, we all share, but that can really cause tremendous pain and suffering for us. And so we label them very specifically so that we can become more aware of when we're engaging in these patterns and then begin to make the necessary changes or create those new habits of thought that are going to get us out of it. So the point of this conversation is not to judge anyone or anything, but is to help you begin to see where the pitfalls are in your mind so that you can start to change it. Now, the victim mentality is a very specific, common pattern of thought that really is just a byproduct of poor training. Our culture has fostered and facilitated this idea that the way to get self-worth is through achievement, that by kind of climbing this ladder, we're going to eventually arrive at the day when we have everything we want, and in having everything we want, we can finally be happy. So I call it the if-then mentality. If I lose 10 pounds, then I can be happy. When I get the promotion, then I can be happy. If my parents tell me that I can do this trip that I want to go on after graduation, then I'll be happy. It's this belief that we don't even know we have, that the only way to feel better or to be happy is to have what we want, is to have the circumstances of our lives go exactly the way we need them to go all the time. That's what the victim mentality is all about. The perfect and most cliche example of this we see in our relationships. It's, you live with a roommate or a family member or a partner. That's where you're going to see it play out in the most obvious way. So, for example, if, my brother or husband always leaves the toilet seat up and it drives me nuts, I think the only way for me to feel better is for them to change. Now, you can see where that's problematic because I have no control over anybody else. I can ask them to change, but I have no control over whether or not they care about that or whether they start to actually do it. And if every time I observe that seat, up, I'm going to get freaked out, I have a problem. Now I'm being held hostage by the circumstances not going my way. Now, when you stop and think about it, this is something that the average person is doing every moment of every day, not just with their relationships, but with everything. So, I like to use the weather test. If you wake up in the morning and you look outside and it's raining or really crappy weather, does that basically make you say, I'm not going outside? Or does that immediately impact your mood in a negative way? If it does, then you've got the victim mentality in a huge way, and you really want to immediately begin to shift it. Obviously, the weather is just one small example, but other things would be like if someone's walking slowly in front of you, or if traffic lights really piss you off, or if someone doesn't hold the door for you, do you go into this big tirade about how, humanity is this, horrible race. If you are dramatically impacted by other people or what the circumstances outside of your control are doing at any given moment, you don't have control because you're always dependent on what everybody else is doing and what all of these things that you have zero say in, how they're playing out. That is a byproduct, however, of bad training, of bad teaching, of bad information. We've all been taught that the only way to feel better is to manipulate the physical world because we've believed and we've been taught this for generations now, that the way to achieve happiness is through action. And the problem with that is it does not recognize or factor in the role of our thoughts. It does not factor in the truth, which is all that really matters, is not what happens, but what you say about what happens. So this goes back hundreds of years, really to the 1600s, when medicine really began. So most people know that our great philosophers were the original scientists, and that's why, for example, PhDs, where that phrase comes from, is from this idea that our first scientists were our philosophers. And while they also debated morals and values and politics, this is where, understanding the material world became critical. So to give you a very quick history, in 1640, when René Descartes, the French philosopher, wanted to start to study human anatomy, recognizing that the only way to achieve real scientific breakthroughs in medicine was going to be by studying anatomy and biology, of course. And so he knew, however, that the church, who was predominantly in charge at the time, he was going to have to convince them that desecrating flesh was an okay thing to do. And rather than try to sneak around and do it behind their back, he went right to them and said, look, we've got to do this for humanity. But the dead body is dead. I mean, look, the soul leaves the body, and you guys you're the leaders in understanding the soul. Us scientists have nothing to say about that. We're just looking at the physical form. So us scientists and medicine, we're going to focus on the physical, the material realm, and you, religion, can take all things related to the soul, which was believed to be thoughts. Thoughts were believed to be an expression of the soul. And so forever after, medicine would not acknowledge the role of thoughts at all. And still to this day, does not. So, in fact, up through the early 1900s, if you were in medical school and you mentioned thinking, you would be considered a quack, you'd be laughed out of the room, because medicine took a very mechanistic or machine approach to understanding the human form. Even the field of psychology, most people don't know this, Sigmund Freud, the reason that he was so motivated to study and to create psychology, he was a neuroscientist, was because he was convinced that that medicine, or that physical illness, could be created by thought. However, when he went to pursue that line of research, he received so much pushback from the church and from his colleagues that he scrapped it. And not only did he get rid of that project, he also intentionally created psychology in the language of literature and anthropology, so that you would never think in scientific language terms when engaging with psychology. And that's when he turns attention to the subconscious and the Oedipus complex and the Electra complex and his obsession with sex. So the point is that this is a real problem. We really do not know that our thoughts matter. We've really been trained to think, oh, thoughts are invisible, nobody can see them, so they don't play a factor. The only way for me to feel better is to control the physical world around me, and that is what we all try to do. And tragically, we have missed the mark in an extreme way. For that reason, we don't know that your thoughts constantly are creating the physical changes in your physiology, in your brain, in your body, in your hormonal system. We don't know that every single thought we have is like playing, I like to think of it as like a puppeteer, that you are literally with your thinking manipulating every aspect of not only the body, but of your world, because your thinking is what creates perception. Now, this is all science, guys. This is all information that's available to all of us easily. And my hope at Mind Movement is to make it more and more accessible to more and more people, to help you understand that you have no control over the physical realm around you, but you have complete authority and complete control over your thoughts, your focus, and ultimately, because of that, how you feel. Now, that's true if you do the work to undo what's been laid in foundation for so many years to this point. Because up until this point, all of us have built really detrimental habits of thought and emotion, believing that the only thing that mattered was the physical, not knowing that the non-physical, the invisible, is truly the driver of everything. Now, one last point I need you to understand, and I will attach a link below so you can learn more about this on your own, to a TED Talk to one of my favorite scientists, one of the leaders, if not the leader, foremost expert on consciousness, Dr. Anil Seth, who explains so perfectly the role of perception in our understanding and our experience. So what you don't know is that how we take information in through our senses is not a one-way street. In other words, for years we've been led to believe that all of us see the world around us in the same way. That, we look out and we see the sun shining and we all go sun shining because we've been taught that's the sun. We all think that, we see a table, we see a chair, we see a human body. We all think human body, table, chair. End of story. Well, that is not entirely the case. In fact, what is far more accurate is to say that as much as we take in information, we put out information. So in every moment, what we see around us is a combination of what we put out and what's coming in from the external world. In other words, what you see is an illusion created by your perception. And as a result of that, we are all living these kind of constant self-fulfilling prophecies where we are stuck in a never-ending feedback loop where if I, for example, believe that someone's looking at me on the subway because I'm paranoid, what do you think it is that I find? If I believe that, I'm a fat, horrible, ugly person and no one's ever going to love me, what do you think I'm going to see and find in my experience? Because what you don't know is you are constantly just seeing the world through your lens, not any objective truth. And if you don't believe me, I will provide plenty of evidence and scientific support to help you understand, just like I had to. So the point of this is helping you to see that you are in control.